Ryan Beckett's voice cut through the conference room like a whip. "You're done here, Ethan." He said it with that smug half-smile. The one he'd been practicing since he arrived 3 weeks earlier as the new chief operations officer. He leaned back in the leather chair, coffee cup in hand, as if he'd just solved world hunger. Ethan Caldwell didn't flinch. He simply closed his black notebook, the one with the faded silver initials in the corner, stood up slowly, and buttoned his charcoal jacket. No argument. No raised voice. Just a quiet nod, like a man who'd already calculated every possible outcome and accepted this one. I sat 3 seats away. Nora Ellis, Director of Infrastructure Compliance. I felt the air change. Not the usual corporate drama. This was something heavier. The kind of wrong that makes your stomach drop before your brain understands why. Ryan had swaggered into Vanguard Cloud Services like he owned the place. "We're cutting dead weight," he announced in his first all-hands. "Streamlining. Optimizing. Focusing on high-impact talent. Translation: fire anyone who doesn't perform in meetings. Keep the ones who make flashy slides." Ethan was the opposite of flashy. 41 years old. Same navy sweater every Monday. Black coffee. No sugar. He wrote the clearest technical documentation I'd ever seen. Documents so precise they could survive an SEC audit without a single question. But almost no one outside the infrastructure team really understood what he did. He was the architect of the core transaction fabric, the invisible backbone that processed over $180 million in financial transactions every single hour. Every payment gateway. Every banking API. Every automated reconciliation. Every regulatory audit trail flowed through the system Ethan had designed, hardened, and protected for 9 years. Ryan barely glanced at the dashboards during Ethan's review. He circled one line on a cost report, labeled Ethan's role non-essential, and signed the termination papers without asking a single technical question. I tried to intervene. I opened the legal binder to Section 17B, the Primary Continuity Steward Protocol. Ryan waved me off. "This is an operations decision,
Nora."
not a legal one." That was the moment I knew we were in trouble. 17 minutes after Ethan walked out the door, leaving his badge on the table, the first red alert appeared. One ping on the operations dashboard. Then 5. Then 30. Then the flood. The core transaction fabric, our lifeblood, simply stopped. No crash. No error message you could Google. Just a total, absolute silence. Incoming syncs from partner banks froze. Scheduled settlements failed. API handshakes collapsed mid-session. Client dashboards across the country went dark. I watched the numbers plummet in real time. $180 million an hour. Every second of silence was millions in stalled money and broken trust. Ryan's voice echoed down the hall. "What the hell is going on?" Mike Chen, our lead engineer, stared at the logs and went pale. "Access denied. Continuity steward token invalid. Safeguard protocol engaged." Ryan snapped. "What does that mean?" Mike looked at me, then back at Ryan. "It means Ethan was the primary continuity steward, and there is no override on file." Ryan laughed, actually laughed like it was a joke. "There has to be a backdoor." Mike shook his head. "There isn't. Not without dual attestation from legal and operations, signed in advance. That's in the master service contracts with every tier, one client." I turned my monitor toward Ryan and pointed to the clause we all signed off on 6 months earlier. Section 17B. Involuntary removal of the named continuity steward without pre-delegated authority triggers immediate safeguard lockdown of the core fabric to prevent cascading compliance failure. You approved the language yourself, Ryan.
His face changed.
The smugness cracked. By minute 4, our biggest client, a major national bank, called screaming. By minute 7, 2 more enterprise clients had their legal teams on the line. By minute 10, the CTO was running down the hallway in a panic.
And Ethan?
He was sitting in his car in the parking lot. Engine off. Badge still resting on the passenger seat. I texted him the moment the first dashboard went red. His reply was 2 words. I'm here. That was the exact moment Ryan realized he hadn't just fired an engineer. He had pulled the pin on a grenade he didn't know was in his own hand. The war room turned into a pressure cooker. Ryan paced like a caged animal, barking orders that no one could follow. Engineers were frantically trying every workaround they knew, backup relays, emergency failover scripts, even old manual reconciliation processes. Everything failed because the fabric wasn't broken. It was locked. By design. I watched Ryan's confidence erode minute by minute. The man who had swaggered in 3 weeks ago now looked like someone watching his entire career slide off a cliff. At 11:47 a.m., the general counsel, Margaret Klein, walked in carrying the full master contract binder. She didn't even sit down. Ryan, she said calmly, we need to read section 17B and the attached riders out loud on the emergency bridge with Ethan. Ryan's jaw tightened. Why? Because the contract requires it. Ethan joined the video call exactly on time. Black hoodie. Same calm face. Sitting in his car with a paper cup of gas station coffee. No anger. No triumph. Just quiet patience. Margaret began reading. Her voice steady and precise. The primary continuity steward holds sole authority over safeguard protocols. In the event of involuntary termination without 14-day advance written delegation signed by both legal and the board, the core transaction fabric shall enter lockdown mode. All transaction flows shall cease until the original steward re-authenticates or the board grants emergency reinstatement with full indemnity. The room was dead silent. Ryan's voice cracked. He's not even an employee anymore. That clause is void. Margaret looked at him the way a judge looks at a child who just lied in court.
No.
Ryan. The designation is tied to the infrastructure configuration, not employment status. You terminated the steward without clearing the protocol. You created a non-compliant state. Ethan unmuted. His voice was soft, almost gentle. I reminded HR of this exact clause during my offboarding. It was documented in the exit log. Ryan's face went white. Then came the second bombshell. Margaret turned the page. There's also section 22F. She read it slowly. Involuntary removal of the continuity steward during an active SOC2 Type 2 audit window or without board pre-approval shall trigger automatic notification to all Tier 1 clients of a compliance chain of custody breach. Ryan whispered.
No.
Too late. The automated alerts had already fired. 4 of our largest clients, banks that represented nearly 40% of our revenue, had received system-generated emails informing them that Vanguard Cloud Services had broken its compliance chain of custody. Their security teams and legal departments were already mobilizing. Slack channels exploded. Phones wouldn't stop ringing. One of our senior account directors ran past the glass wall, face ashen, whispering, "What the hell do I tell them?" Ryan leaned over the table, knuckles white. "Can we retract the alerts?" Margaret gave him a look I'll never forget.
No.
The notification flow was validated by the external audit firm as part of our SOC2 policy. You activated it the moment you terminated Ethan. The realization hit the room like cold water. This wasn't just a technical outage anymore. It was a full-blown regulatory and contractual crisis. Ryan looked at Ethan's calm face on the screen. For the first time, he understood who actually held the power. The negotiations began in earnest at 2:15 p.m. The chief operating officer, Rebecca Lang, joined the bridge. Her voice was tight with stress. "Ethan," she said, "what will it take to restore service and bring us back into compliance?" Ethan answered without hesitation. voice level and precise. 3 conditions. First, full legal indemnity for any regulatory or client claims arising from this incident. Second, direct reporting line to the board on all continuity matters. Third, a new Section 23 added to every current and future infrastructure contract. No executive, including the COO or CFO, may remove or override the primary continuity steward without unanimous board vote and 30-day public notice period. The room went completely still. Ryan exploded. "This is extortion," Ethan replied calmly. "This is governance. You mistook caution for weakness." Rebecca didn't argue with Ethan. She looked at Ryan like he was already a ghost. By late afternoon, the board chair,
Dr.
Evelyn Park, joined the call. Her voice was ice. "I have reviewed the contracts and the audit trail. Ryan, your decision to terminate Ethan without consulting legal or the board violated multiple clauses we ourselves approved. Fix this today." Ryan tried one last time. "We can't give one person that much power."
Dr.
Park cut him off. "You already gave it to him when you signed the contracts. Your mistake was not understanding what you signed." That evening, Ethan walked back into the building through the side entrance. No fanfare. No security escort. Just a quiet man in a navy sweater carrying a manila folder. He entered the war room, placed 2 signed documents on the table, his reinstatement letter and the new Section 23 language, and simply said, "Server keys." Legal handed them over immediately. "Vault sequence," he said to the CTO. The CTO nodded quickly. Unchanged. Ethan sat down at the main terminal. 2 windows open, core configuration shell and synchronization script. He pulled out a small folded checklist, handwritten, initialed, time-stamped. The same kind we used to tease him about being too analog. He unfolded it carefully, cross-checked every line, then began typing. Pulse request initialized. Reauthentication accepted. Key verified. Uplink green. Database sync green. API threads restored. Fabric active. 6 minutes. That's all it took. Client dashboards flickered back to life across the country. Settlement queues started moving again. Phones stopped ringing. The pressure in the room released like a valve opening. Ethan logged the full restoration trace, signed the compliance attestation, then stood up. He looked at Rebecca and simply nodded. "Your move." By Monday morning, Ryan Beckett was gone. His name vanished from the company directory overnight. No farewell email. No LinkedIn post. Just erased. The board held an emergency session and passed sweeping changes. All override authority on continuity matters now required full board approval. A mandatory 30-day transition period for any change to the continuity steward role. Section 23 language became standard in every infrastructure contract. Ethan was officially appointed Vice President of Continuity Systems, reporting directly to the board. He refused the usual executive photo, press release, and team announcement. When HR pushed back, he replied, "If this title is to mean anything, it begins with what we choose not to say." The company changed. Meetings became quieter, decisions slower, more deliberate. The flashy presentations and growth hacker energy that Ryan had brought in disappeared almost overnight. People started treating documentation with respect again. Engineers began writing clearer handover notes. Legal reviews became non-negotiable. 3 weeks later, I ran into Ethan in the break room. He was stirring decaf into a chipped mug. Same navy sweater. Same calm presence. A young analyst named Marcus, fresh out of college, worked up the courage to approach him. "Mr. Caldwell, can I ask you something?" "Just Ethan." Marcus swallowed. "I heard that one clause was the reason everything stopped when you left. Is that true?" Ethan reached into his folder and pulled out a clean copy of the original contract. He highlighted one sentence near the bottom. Without continuity, all flows stop. Marcus read it twice. His face showed a mixture of awe and fear. Ethan took the paper back, folded it once, and returned it to the folder. He didn't smile. He didn't lecture. He simply said, "The system was never built around me. It was built to survive people who don't understand it." That sentence stayed with me. Ryan's old office now sits empty. The glass door still carries the faint outline where his nameplate used to be.
Inside.
Only one thing remains, a framed photo of Ryan at a company summit, arms crossed, grinning with perfect teeth. Someone turned the frame face down. No one knows who did it. No one asked. Ethan walks past that office every day without glancing inside. He carries the same manila folder, boots steady, heading to whatever audit or review is next on his calendar. He doesn't seek recognition. He doesn't give victory speeches. He simply ensures the system works. And because of him, it does. Quietly, reliably, without drama. The real lesson isn't about revenge or power. It's about what happens when you mistake silence for weakness. When you confuse flash for substance. When you fire the one person who truly understands how everything stays standing, and then discover, too late, that the entire building was resting on his shoulders. Some people build empires with noise and bold claims. Others build the foundations that let those empires survive when the noise stops. We almost learned that lesson the hard way. We got lucky. Most companies never do.